Good morning, welcome to our daily psalm. Today we're reading through Psalm 144, Psalm 144. I'm sure you'll have had the experience of working through something and thinking, pausing halfway through to think, we're halfway through this and we've got more to do, and it takes an enormous amount of effort to summon up the will, the courage, the determination to go back out there and face whatever the second half of the challenge might be. We may think of that in terms of this coronavirus crisis. We're partway through this. There's an awful lot more still to come, a lot more of working out as to how we're going to behave differently, as we certainly will need to do in the days to come. And we pause for a moment to take stock and think where we've come from and where we're going. Well, Psalm 144 to me feels a bit like a psalm for the half-time dressing room. The first half of the match has been played and fought, and it's been a tough fight. The opposition is strong. But there's a second half to come and a great deal to play for, and it will take a massive effort to win the match. And the manager himself will play a large part, a huge part, in getting the tactics of the game right. But after the match, well, afterwards, it'll be back home to the family. And actually what really matters. Psalm 144, just as a matter of technical detail, draws on material from a number of other psalms. Psalm 18 in particular, but at least half a dozen others. You'll probably recognise verse 3 of Psalm 144 when we get there, coming from Psalm 8. It's quite a famous verse. There's actually in the final section of Psalm 144 where the new material is to be found, with its sense that the stress and the pressure of constant fighting is finally over, will one day be over. In its own way, it's a vision of heaven, actually, pictured in terms of the common scenes around a Middle Eastern rural life, but an idyllic one. So young people grow up strong, and the flocks flourish, and the crops are abundant and thrive, where war is a thing of the past, a dim and distant memory that can hardly be recalled, because one day the battle will be over. But we're in Psalm 144 and that time is not yet. So let's jump in. Psalm 144 verse 1. Blessed be the Lord my rock. We've heard that idea, that phrase before in the Psalms. Blessed be the Lord my rock. But this is the slightly unusual bit here. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who teaches my hands for war and my fingers for battle. My steadfast love and my fortress, these are descriptions again of the Lord my rock, my stronghold and my deliverer, my shield in whom I trust, who subdues the people under me. So David acknowledges, this is a psalm of David, David acknowledges and praises the God who is both David's protector. Uses a number of phrases to get that idea across, isn't it? That God is his rock, his fortress, his stronghold, his shield. But the God who is also with him in the fight to hold off the enemy. So God is the one who trains David's hands for battle and subdues the enemy under him. All God's doing. So we've got both coach and striker, if you like, in the team, working together as a team. But the thing about David, and we've noticed this many times before, David never loses the bigger picture even when he's right in the thick of battle, even though he knows he's got to go out and fight a second half of the match. In the grand scheme of things, though David's battles will inevitably fill his world, fully engage him, when he's in the thick of it, God's perspective is so much greater and he never loses that sense. So he goes on in verses 3 and 4. O Lord, what are mortals that you should consider them? Mere human beings that you should take thought for them. They're like a breath of wind. Their days pass like a shadow. So David brings a God perspective into this second half, which he knows he must still fight. And it's that vision of God being so much greater that then David brings in with a prayer in verses 5 to 8. And all the verbs in this prayer are imperative. They're bold, they're urgent, they're insistent. It's almost as though David, the striker in the match, has become the manager and turns to God, the manager, to say, you've got to play your part here. It's time for you to show what you can do. We need you to do what only you can do. So here's verse 5, David's prayer to God. Part your heavens, O Lord, and come down. We might almost say, come down on the pitch and be with us in this game, in this match. Touch the mountains and they shall smoke. Let's have some atmosphere here. Let's have some big moves from you. Cast down your lightnings and scatter them, scatter the enemy. Shoot out your arrows and let thunder roar. It's almost a crowd around the stadium roaring on God's team to win. Reach down your hand from on high. Deliver me. Take me out of the great waters from the hand of foreign enemies whose mouths speak wickedness and their right hand is the hand of falsehood. So we get a sense that this battle is not straightforward. It's not actually like having two teams on a pitch who've got the same numbers and are following the same kind of rules. The reference to the right hand there in verse 8 is of the right hand being raised heavenward whilst an oath is being sworn, or the right hand that is offered to seal and agree a deal. Brings the guarantee of the person's character behind it. Whereas here, the right hand of the enemy is not to be trusted at all, anything but. It's full of lies. So the enemy is playing by very different rules to David and his team. And then verses 9 to 11 moves on to part one, really, of the post-match celebration. It assumes that victory will be on David's side, I suppose, with God in your team, or you on God's team, perhaps better. It's a reasonable assumption. And David has known many times in the past that because he is on God's team, God has seen him through the battle. So part one then of post-match celebration, verse 9. O God, I will sing to you a new song. I'm going to have to compose a new one after this battle. I'll play to you on a 10-stringed harp. It's going to be quite an impressive sound, this song. You that give salvation to kings and have delivered David your servant. Save me from the peril of the sword. Deliver me from the hand of foreign enemies, whose mouths speak wickedness, whose right hand is the hand of falsehood. Just a recollection then that we will overcome people who work in very different ways, who play by different rules, who cannot be trusted. And then we get to this final section, verses 12 to 15, which I say seems to be the new material, if you like. The other verses have been compiled from other psalms, but we get to this new material, and there's almost a wistful sense of longing to get to the end of the match, the end of the battles, to get beyond all the turmoil and treachery. Verses 12 to 14 are a series of word pictures, and they paint a scene of tranquility and peace, of contentedness, of settledness, where there is no threat, no stress of enemies trying to get at you to invade. Nothing of that anymore. And these are pictures that are nothing to do with building great empires, but they are in the simple and profound delight and satisfaction of seeing the next generation of family grow up strong and healthy, happy and healthy. And at the end of the day, if we were all asked what do we want most for our family, for those most important to us, that's actually what we want, isn't it? For them to live a happy life. However we live our lives, may we leave a legacy that allows them to live fulfilled, happy, contented lives. So here's verse 12. So there's a sense of we fight this battle in order that our sons in their youth may be like well-nurtured plants. Other psalms referred to the youth as olive shoots, tiny little shoots. Here they're pictured as have grown into sturdy saplings. And our daughters like pillars carved for the corners of the temple. This is a patristic society, so we might not have used a thought quite like that. One commentator describes this picture as the very picture of statuesque elegance and strength. Almost a sense of pride that our daughters are so strong and elegant as young women. Then verse 13, 13 and 14, they don't have, I think in our day we would see what's coming in these verses as something that would be something in which we would place our pride because we had achieved it. It would almost be to look at this, look at all that I've done and won for myself. No, these verses rather have a sense of settled rejoicing that the material wealth they represent is in a time of peace, and that also is a gift of God. This wealth that we're enjoying is something given by God in his goodness and grace. So verse 13, our barns be filled with all manner of store, our flocks bearing thousands and tens thousands in our fields. Sign, of course, of great riches. Verse 14, our cattle be heavy with young. May there be no miscarriage or untimely birth. It's all very natural. It's the way it should be. It's just, there's no difficulty, no cry of distress in our streets. You don't hear of knifings and beatings up and of anything else. It's just peace in our streets. And then finally, verse 15, which at the end of the psalm reveals the source, the cause, the reason for the blessings of these previous three verses. Because behind the bounty and the beauty is the relationship of the people who know the Lord as their own God. For this is the greatest treasure of all. From this flows all of the blessing. And verse 15 itself is a beatitude, isn't it? Happy are the people whose blessing this is. Happy are the people who have the Lord for their God. Amen, we would say to that. So let's turn to prayer. O God, O God, our deliverer, stir our weak wills, revive our weary spirits, and give us courage for the second half. Spur us on with the vision of a world where there is freedom for all your children and for the world, to the praise of your glorious name. Amen.